Yeah. I love my HBCU. And boy, I love it, love it. I love it, love it. I love my HBCU. And man, I hope my team they won. Yeah. I hope my team they won. Yeah. Man. I hope my team they won. I hope my team they won. Yeah. I tune into the HBCU Sports Lab to see if my team won or lost. If they lost, I'm quiet as a mouse. But if they won, keep tab. I'ma do the dab, yeah. Dr. Cavil, he know what he be talking about. Mike and Charles, they know what they be talking about. They compress the analytic data with this hip hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they won or lost, and who the ball. So listen to Professor, yes sir, and pay attention, cause he gonna teach a lesson.
This is Dr. Cavil with Inside the HBC Sports Lab. I'm back off a sabbatical. Don't worry. I still got some more time. I'm gonna give y'all just a little bit of love today. Then I'll be back on my sabbatical as I actually get a chance maybe to take a little vacation time in July. Planning to go to Bahamas, Las Vegas, Atlanta. You know, we'll do what it does. Then we'll get in the mood where it's time to get to Media Day, HBCU Media Day. And then you'll see me back in the captain's chair. But let me give a kudos to those that have come in the house and held it down. Obviously, very own Mike Washington, Charles Bishop, Brandon has even been in the house doing things. And that's Brandon King in terms of what he's been able to do. Brian Fulford was hold it down, as well as AD Drew, a couple of other gentlemen and ladies out there getting it done. So I want to thank them for what they've done in my stead in doing incredible work to make sure that you get your HBCU sports. With that being said, welcome to episode 518 of Inside the HBCU Sports Lab show and podcast, the show that's covering the sporting HBCU diaspora, all things HBCU sports. For institutions large and small, from the NAIA to the NCAA, we share insights and information on the HBCU sports culture, HBCU athletic aesthetics to facilitate the story of HBCU athletic programs and the business of HBCU sports. I'm your host, Dr. Kenyatta Cavil, normally with my co-host Mike Washington, Charles Bishop. No, I have not fired them, but they're on the short list. We'll see if we can get them back. They're out there taking care of business in all seriousness, getting things done in the neighborhood, if you would, as they should and could. With that being said, I invite to come share the stage with me. Brian Fulford is in the house, as well as Brandon King. Sneaker Shop Talk. I like that little stuff you did last week, Brandon. With that being said, let me get the rest of the little identifiers out the way. We're filming from our home studios and sending a signal live. The K-Sway's 1230 AM studios with the Texas Radio Hall of Famer, Ralph Cooper, in the beautiful home of Texas Southern University from Houston, Texas. With that being said, Brian Fulford, how you doing today?
I'm doing well, Doc. It's always great to be called into the lab. You know, I had to do a quick change. Had got my dinner. I'm sitting there cooking a meal, and I'm like, Doc called and said, "Oh, all right, hold on. Let me try not to burn up the chicken and all the other stuff." So. Hopefully, if I run away real quick, Doc, it's because my stove is on fire. That's all.
Oh, yeah, I understand. Make sure we do that. And make sure you call you off of duty, put up the bat signal, and here he comes. With that being said, Brandon King, how you doing today?
Doing good, Doc. And like Brian said, I'm like one of the guys in '92 when USA Basketball called, I show up. Didn't matter when you called me, I got the call, so I'm here.
Hey, you got the call. You're not like Caitlin Clark. So
that's right.
Doc, wow.
Hey, man, somebody get in. She might get the call. She get the back up. That ain't my fault. I'm just telling you. I don't even want no smoke from her friends. And if they the type of friends you have, I don't know if you want those. Some would say they're enemies. And she spoke up that, give her credit about that. She said, I don't want any parts of that. Today's episode of Inside the HBCU Sports Lab, sponsored by THG Agency, LLC. Is THG Agency is a company that provides sporting and educational consulting and data analytics. Yeah, it took a minute, but she got it there. Let me open things up before I give y'all a chance to get in what your news of the day is. The reason I'm really here is the special unveil. It's that time, second annual release of the top 6 ADs, VPs of athletics, rankings for HBCUs at the Division I level. Still working on those Division II rankings. We'll see if maybe Brandon King wants to get his foot in there. Or, you know, AD is really that specialist at the Division II and even NIA level. So we'll let him do that. And maybe we'll come on and I'll join up with Brian and we'll talk about what they think in terms of the rankings at that level. With that being said, today we will unveil, in the second segment, we'll unveil the top 6. So listen up. We'll see if there's any changes from last year as we did it inaugural announcement last year. I'll see what that looks like. Speaking of ADs, it's been about a week that AD, Dr. Allen, Mickey Allen, that is, of Tennessee State, Brandon King, giving you a little love out there. HBCU AD makes compelling case for better facilities to generate revenue. In a recent address, the TSU Board of Trustees, Dr. Mickey Allen, the Director of Athletics, underscored the pivotal role of infrastructure propelling the university towards greater heights. He answered questions and provided insights centered around the necessity of upgrading and expanding both athletic and residential facilities to offer a more competitive and supportive environment for student athletes. When questioned about how athletics was doing as a standalone part of the Tennessee State University, Dr. Allen began highlighting the financial challenges currently faced by the athletics department, which operates at a significant deficit. He articulated the urgent need for revenue-generated facilities on campus, such as an on-campus stadium. The facility he proposed and would not only ease the financial burden on the institution, but also enable TSU to host high-profile events that could generate substantial revenue. Quote, "We need to get revenue-generating facilities on campus so we can start offsetting the brunt of institutional dollars that are going to athletics," Dr. Mickey Allen said. You know, he talked a little bit about updoing Ed Temple track, which is going in the right directions. He did that, meaning they could host some junior AAU. I'm a little concerned, though. When I hear this magic word, I would be concerned if I was a Tennessee State alumni. They said stand alone. The only programs that I know out there in terms of athletics that can stand alone are what I now call the Super 2 conferences of the SEC and Big 12. And I'm talking about the top of those. Even all those programs sitting there are not standalone. They get financial support from the institution. So anytime I start hearing it stand alone, you know, I kind of hear that stuff over there in Florida with FAMU. And I'm amazed at what FAMU can do, because I know what it means when you say institute standalone and you can't subsidize athletic programs. Obviously, we know you don't have state support. That's Texas. A lot of institutions do that. Tennessee, Florida, you know, to name a few of them, or you can't get state subsidies. But when you are having a board that is mandated, whether it's state-wise or internal, that says that you can't use other subsidy beyond a certain point to help support athletics, that is a major concern, because that means now the brunt goes to the athletic director to be very imaginative, and they're going to have to get into some sponsorship. And while we as fans often think that sponsors grow on trees, and we ain't talking about those mom and pops. That are not. We not talking about those fish shells. We talking about significant sponsors, which means they're going to be looking to see what you're doing with your current fan base. And what we seen for football last year, averaging just under 3,000 fans, that's a significant concern from Tennessee State. And I know y'all have your own framework of how y'all see the world, but I'm just telling you from my experience studying this, looking at the data, that should be something that chills you all and has you all very concerned in the marketplace if the way they're defining standalone is what I've seen it defined before. So, Brandon King, on your private time, I got a homework assignment. You need to go find out what does Tennessee State mean when they say it's standalone, so you can report back. With that being said, Brian, I won't put you under the bus. I'll let you sit that out. I did that. You don't, you know, you fine. You don't have to worry about your folks beating you up in one way or the other. To put that on Dr. Cavil. My shoulders are broad. You know, hey, and we'll see when we release this top 6, how many ADs and VPs going to be texting calling me. With that being said, Brian, go ahead. What's your news of the day?
you know, it's funny, Doc. You're talking about Tennessee State, and I was just praising Tennessee State for their video that they released about the game day, you know, game day ticket, you know, information. And Brandon, I'm sure you've seen that. I thought it was very well informed. My sister's a Tennessee State alum, so I instantly shot that to her. I'm like, man, I wish my school would do that. We got all kinds of, anyway, I'm not gonna get into that. But yeah, you know,
I will say this: it was a great marketing and branding informational piece. Yes, it was.
It was. And then I read back those quotes, and I'm like, ooh, okay. But anyway, my news of the day, Doc, I'm gonna go with a matchup that was announced just the other day featuring two historic college football programs. And these are blue bloods. I would say, you know, not only amongst the HBCU, but I would just say in college football general. I mean, I think when you think of HBCUs, one of the first names you come to is Grambling. And I think just in the general college football sphere, I think you say Ohio State. So Grambling State Athletic Communications released just the other day that for the first time in school history, the Grambling State University football team will travel to Columbus, Ohio to take on Ohio State on September 6, 2025. It will be the first time that GSU faces a member of the Big Ten Conference, assumingly also the first time that they're playing Ohio State. This matchup, I think, you know, when you look at the historic context of these two programs, you have Grambling State, which has won 27 Southwestern Athletic Conference championships and 16 Black College national titles. I even looked this up. Ohio State has won 39 Big Ten championships. Now, they have claimed, now watch this, Doc, watch the terminology here. They have claimed 8 national titles, but there are 7 unclaimed national titles credited to Ohio State. So I don't know. You do the math, and you could say 15 national titles, but they only claim 8, and there's 7 unclaimed. I don't, you know. But anyway, a historic matchup. I'm sure there's a lot of money that's involved in this.
$1 million at least is what they're saying.
At least, hopefully, at least $1 million with expenses covered. But I also think it'll also bring up that debate. It's already started by some folks about, is this good for Grambling State? And most people, they're probably a large. You say no, there's probably a lot of people that say no. I will stand on the other side of that line and say the exposure, which is unparalleled to anything that Grambling State football, all due respect to the Bayou Classic, it is unparalleled to anything that they will experience. The atmosphere, secondly, we already talked about the money, unparalleled, probably unparalleled. It may be equal, close to, maybe, I don't know, but it's still significant for one game. And then the third thing, the young men who have aspirations of playing in the NFL, that game against Ohio State will be the game that is sort of used as a measuring stick by NFL scouts to see how they perform. Okay, so I understand that's the pro. Obviously, the con, there will be people who say, like you may be shaking your head thinking, is the risk of potential injuries and things like that, is it worth it? You know, is potentially losing by 60 points worth it? There's the trade-off. So I get it. But I still think as a college football fan, I think it's pretty cool. And it should be a great experience. And hopefully, like Tennessee State fans did. My sister was part of the Tennessee State contingent that went to Notre Dame for that historic game. I hope Grambling State fans travel to Columbus, Ohio to experience game day in C-Bus.
Yeah, I'll add this. Mine is not so much about injuries. I think football is a game of injuries. And, you know, that's not my biggest framework. I do agree with you. As you said, exposure is extremely important. And that the exposure that goes with having your name out there could be intriguing. I'm not sure, though, that the exposure equates to what they get with the Bayou Classic, with that being back on NBC. Universal. This, I would imagine, is probably going to be on the Big Ten Network, not their NBC or Fox in terms of CBS deal that they have aligned. So I would be interested to see if that's the case. That may change my mind if that's but I would imagine the Big Ten Network in terms of what it broadcasts to the NBC is not comparable. So sometimes we need to think about that and kind of look at apples to apples. But to your other point in terms of that, they're still going to play the Bayou Classic. So really you're comparing it to what other non-conference game they have, which would be against another program. The $1 million is significant, but oftentimes I wonder how much is that going to really balance the budget, or is it how much of that is going to go back to the program, them to be able to invest in the program and build on it. If they're going to do that, that is one thing that makes me look a little different about that opportunity. But my experience is much of that goes back into the overall budget, which is the budget that you're front loaded by the university, meaning you're paying that back just like you would do on a credit card. So the investment may not be there. Those are the inside questions that I really look at. Prairie View is playing, I think, Michigan State. So I get kudos because the money that Prairie View is getting is not anywhere close to what Ohio State gets. I would put the caveat out there because I'm always open about this, that we need to be clear when we're doing these delineations. Part of this game was a game that was canceled. So Ohio State needed a game, which is going to drive up the money because their need was there. And so you put them in a little bit of pickle. So that's going to be a little bit of the differentiation. Obviously, when they played FAMU many years ago, their thrust $1 million. They have a larger venue, so they can pay out more to get what they want. So you got to think about that space there. But my biggest things is about the brand awareness. I think it really deteriorates the brand. And that's my biggest concern in terms of you trying to get people to connect to your brand outside of your key folks. And that becomes a major issue. But maybe we'll get a chance to talk about this a little on the back end. I did want to be fair and give Brandon the floor because we're a little bit behind on the schedule before we do this release, but we'll do it as a good tease. So if you would, Brandon, kind of quickly get into what you wanted to share that's on your mind in terms of news today.
Well, Brian took the one I had, and you've already covered one. So I'm just going to be kind of brief. The MEAC announced their ESPN televised games earlier today, and out of the 55 regular season games, 82% or about 45 are going to be shown. And the first one will be the MEAC SWAC Challenge on Saturday, August 24th, which will feature Brian's FAMU Rattlers against the Spartans of Notre Dame, followed by Delaware and Hawaii on CBS later that evening. And it concludes.
Spartans of Norfolk State, man, they're going to beat you up. You call them Notre Dame.
Look, we beat up on them when they came down to Nashville, so they'll be okay.
Oh, you did.
Wow.
So maybe that was purposeful. I see what you did there.
It was.
Wow.
My fault.
I run from no smoke.
Yeah, you give them that smoke. I like that. They deserve that smoke.
Look, it's so rare that I get to talk a little trash. So anytime I get to, I am not going to let that opportunity slip by me at all.
Touche, you're right. When you get a chance.
And
because they're gonna let you know it because y'all still.
Oh yeah. If we would have lost, we'd still be hearing about it.
Oh yeah. Oh, that's for sure. But let's get into our next break. We'll come back on the other side and get a little talk about this top 6 and see. We might bring in another guest to do that with us. So let's take our first break and come back on the other side.
Since 2002, Empowerment Resources, Inc., a nonprofit organization, has empowered more than 1,500 youth and adults in Duval and surrounding counties through its programs Journey into Womanhood, Girls Mentoring, Life Skills for Teens, and parenting education coaching. To get involved with programs, volunteer, or donate, visit www.empowermentresourcesinc.org. Follow us on social media, facebook.com/empowerment.resources and instagram.com/empowermentjax.
The human voice has always connected audiences with experiences. Major brands all across America have trusted Kever's voice time and time again. Conversational, powerhouse, intelligent, and sincere. That's the voice you need for your creative marketing process. KeaversVoice.com. Kever's Voice, Kever's Voice, KeversVoice.com. Always on, all the time.
Nope. Nope.
Come on, him?
Ooh, I like him.
Quick, the quicker picker-upper. Bounty picks up messes quicker, and each sheet is 2 times more absorbent, so you can use less.
He's an 8.
He's a 9.
Bounty, the quicker picker-upper.
From novice to aficionado, find yourself here. High quality cigars plus personal customer service. Slow Burn is Waco's only mobile cigar lounge, featuring a meticulous, curated collection of premium cigars. Visit our website, www.slowburnwaco.com. That's www.slowburnwaco.com.
Compress the analytic data with your hip hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they wanna lose, and who the ball. So listen to Professor, yes sir, and pay attention, cause he gon' teach a lesson.
This is Dr. Cavil with Inside the HBCU Sports Lab. We brought in Mr. Kyle Mosley to jump in here and check on us. How's it going, Kyle?
What's going on, Doc? How you feeling?
I look forward to seeing your thoughts in regards to my ADVP poll rankings. So I'm doing well. I'm excited. It's time to end the year. You got SWAC meetings closing up today where they were returning out checks. Last week, the MEAC gave out checks. Brandon, when does the OVC give out checks?
I didn't mean to do that.
It's a little quiet on there. I asked my other friends over there in the coastal
what they did just a little
conference over there and see if A&T and Hampton see if they got checks.
Well, yeah. Hey Brandon, how you doing? It's the first time being able to see you, Doc.
Pretty good. How you doing, Mr. Mosley?
Good. How you doing?
I didn't realize you had your Tennessee State shirt on. You represent,
of course, right? Of course. Oh,
yeah,
always got to represent.
I'm not mad. Y'all get you some more wins, though. With that being said, let me break down what the poll rankings look before we get in the top 6 and get everybody's thought and see where Brandon AD is on the list. See where Brian's AD is on the list. Kyle Mosley, I apologize. We hadn't do D2 mid-major NIA pro rankings. So I might join you when you do those top 6 to see who's out there. And I'll share that with you and let you unveil that. We said AD might do it. We'll see what that looks like. But this is for the major division. So that's the first thing. I don't want people to think that we're not looking at those because there's some ADs and VPs of athletics at the Division II NIA level that are doing tremendous work. So kudos for them as well. But the breakdown, this is real important because a lot of folks, popularity contests, band rankings and votings, we don't do that over here. Brian and AD is similar about that. They do a analysis in terms of computer rankings, and they get beat up all the time, and they got to remind folks it's the computer, folks. It's the computer. It's not how you feel inside about your institution. This is similar, but I'm going to break down in terms of what goes into the ranking. First, this is your all sport. How did you do in your all sport? Where did you finish in your all sport? You get points. Higher you finish at the top, more points. You finish lower, that's less. What did you do in terms of your men's sports? You get rankings for that. What do you do for your women's sports? You get rankings for that because I wanted to break that down to make sure we see the overall viability of an athletic program, which means we also included facilities. Have you doing new facilities? Are you updating facilities? Are you getting new things in your facilities? That helps in turn your rankings. So I cover and I look all of that information. I have some ADs and VPs that have kindly sent me updates so I know specifically things that they're doing that sometimes hits the media. Maybe it's high, maybe it's low. So I get that information. It goes in there. I go through the websites to make sure that stuff is covered. Bottom line, though, you got to win. Did you win a football championship? Did you win a women's basketball championship? Did you win a men's basketball championship? Did you win men's baseball? Did you win softball? Now, some of y'all out there and saying, hey, my program doesn't have baseball. That's not my fault. Donate some more money and get your team with some baseball. That's not my fault. That's what a sports program is about. You don't have the sports. You don't have cross country. That's not my fault. You don't have tennis. Donate some more money to your program because you see the state is not going to do it. Brandon just told us about that. Brandon's AD said the state's not going to give you a dime on that. So you need to work on that. We also look at your overall in terms of basketball, since there's financial support in that. We look at the tournament versus the regular season, men's and women's. You get points on those rankings. Baseball, softball, we just look at the tournament since they're in divisions. For baseball, we didn't go through that mounting. And so you get all that. And then there's a line in there that also looks at things that may be outside of that. So without further ado, let's get in the top 6. I'm going to go through this. It'll be about time for us to take another break. We'll take the break, come back on the other side, and then I'll get your thoughts in terms of thumbs up or thumbs down. Bulls up. In terms of what it looks like, Bears down. We'll see where you land up. Top 6. At number 6, Dr. Kevin Granger, Texas Southern University Tigers. Dr. Kevin Granger dropped the ranking. Last year, he was at number 5. He dropped the ranking, 71.38, I think, not winning a basketball championship, although they played in for men's on the final, not being up at the top in the regular season. Certainly hurt where he was. Where he finished overall sports trophy, obviously with a lot of help on the men's side. They were at the top of the SWAC, and a lot of that was kudos to what they did, track and field, both indoors, outdoors, and cross country, getting the triple crown, if you allow me to use that phrase, in track and field. So with that edges him and allows him to stay in the top 6, even though he falls one spot. And number 5, Dr. Travion Scott, Grambling State Tigers. They were not ranked. He finds his way into the top 6 in this second annual poll ranking at 72.73. What they did, men's basketball with that championship, finishing 2nd on the women's side, really helped him in terms of the regular season in basketball. Obviously, getting the baseball championship went a long way, but not finishing very well in track and field. Obviously, football, you see that hurt him. They actually made a change in the head coaching position. So that makes sense because that was really hurting him. Facilities, they've done a lot of things quietly on the facility. Inside the facility, updating with the football field in terms of what they're doing down there, in terms of facilities there. That helps as well. We'll see where that goes moving forward. At number 4, Dr. Jason Cable, Alabama State Hornets. He falls 2 spots as he was really edging out and in the ranking there. He falls a little bit this year, getting a lot of things done quietly behind the scenes, but the championships across the board really hurt him, particularly in some of those big-time sports, football, men's basketball, women's basketball following a little further behind. It's hurt him getting it done. Softball taking some deep runs there a little bit, even though they moved in a different direction with softball. They're interesting. 84.31 points. So he is at number 4. And number 3, women's enter into the fray. Melody Webb of Norfolk State Spartans. Previous rank 2, so she does fall a spot, but still getting it done in terms of those rankings. I should say she actually stays at number 3, 87.62 in terms of where she is. Obviously doing a lot of good things. Track and field, they're getting it done in the MEAC, right in the top of those standings. You know what they've done. Women's basketball, men's basketball regular season, got it done. Not so well in the tournament, so that hurt a little bit, but really in the mix there. At number 2, we get a new coach coming in. Overall, all sports is very healthy there, plays in the top rankings, some championships across the board there, but finds a way to remain in the top part of the rankings, I should say, at number 2, although did fall one spot. We got a new number 1. Number 1 this year is outside of the SWAC, outside of the independent, is Kerry Davis. Howard Bison jumps up 4 spots to get to the number 1 ranking and really outpaces a lot of folks. If you look at their score, 96.69, banner year in terms of what they've done in NEC, what they've done obviously in the MEAC with championships on many directions, getting it done in various sports, football, getting to the Celebration Bowl, knocking out North Carolina Central that many people thought would be getting it done. So a lot of championships on both sides of the ball. So a lot of high rankings for Howard across the board in athletics, getting it done in terms of what they did in track and field. So ultimately, number 1 is Kerry Davis. With that being said, number 6, Dr. Kevin Granger of Texas Southern University. At number 5, Dr. Travian Scott, Grambling State University. At number 4, Dr. Jason Cable, Alabama State University. At number 3, Melody Webb, Norfolk State University. At number 2, Ashley Robinson, Jackson State University. And number 1, Kerry Davis of Howard University rounds out the top 6 to give it to you. We'll take our break here and see what these individuals said about the ADVP ranking. Who did I miss out on? Who should be further up in their thought process? Who should be further down? And outrank, some of them might say somebody shouldn't be in the top 6 at all. They want them out of there. We'll see on the other side. Stick with us after this break.
If you think all pads are exactly the same, think again. This is Always Ultra Thins reinvented with the Always Triple Protection System. This pad wicks gushes 90% faster, absorbs even more so you can feel dry, and locks odors in. Rethink your pad for up to 100% leak-free and odor-free comfort with the totally reinvented Always Ultra Thins. This is always like never before.
The Cavil Group is a Florida-based marketing and training consulting firm. We help businesses communicate to their target audience and engage them in conversation. We also help to expand their audiences, which will ultimately result in growth for those organizations. In addition to being a certified constant contact specialist, my colleagues and I are also certified in John Maxwell Leadership Principles. We use these proven principles to conduct workshops, training, and private coaching sessions for individuals and companies looking to take things to the next level. Contact us to schedule a free consultation. Issues today, don't delay, call Cavil.
As technology continues to bring changes to the world of education, it's time we also reimagine teacher professional development. Gone are the days of one-size-fits-all learning that can only be accessed at a specific time and place. The Stride PD Center is an on-demand library of mobile-friendly courses that allow educators to learn anytime and anywhere. Our dynamic courses provide bite-sized learning and help educators advance their knowledge while also gaining professional development hours. The best professional development plans are those that include a level of flexibility and choice for educators. Whether you're a teacher, school, or district, visit us today to take charge of your learning.
Compress the analytic data with your hip hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they wanna loud, and who the ball. So listen to Professor, yes sir, and pay attention, cause he gon' teach a lesson.
This is Dr. Cavil with Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington, Charles Bishop. They're out on assignment, so we have none other than Brian Fulford, Brandon King, and Kyle T. Mosley, as they like to People's Champ, as they like to call it. With that being said, Brian, you were the one able to keep a straight face, so I'm gonna actually save you for last. Your face cold on you.
I wonder
why. Usually we make the young person wait. Kyle, you know, You know, some of y'all folks that are familiar with them hazing things. Oh, that's right. We can't say that no more. We not saying that there ain't no hazing. So we're gonna let the young person, as we used to force them to go last, we're gonna allow the youngest one of the group to go first. We're gonna let him mix it up and get in there. Yep, no PV in the mix, no FAMU in the mix. So you can't say that this is something that just I made up and I like my PV folks. I will say FAMU and PV were in the top 10. But this is the top 6. So I don't mention your name. If you're not in the top 6, you got to do some work. Now, you're not far off. You're top 10. You're not too bad. The football championship FAMU helped out quite a bit. You know, a couple of other championships there in your Olympic sports, as we talked about. That's all in there as well. But you got to put in a little more work. You got to do some various things to get in here in the rankings. And all I do is put data to the pen. Your championships, I put them in the paper, calculate it up, and that's where my points come from. You win championships, you add a little facility things, you put in some work, you get recognized. Now, I'm not saying this. Some of y'all have presidents, chancellors, and they're happy with what you're doing. I'm not saying that you don't deserve a contract extension. That's not what this ranking is about. This ranking is about whether you have championships. So, Brandon, tell Mickey Allen, keep working. Get those facilities. Get in the top 6. I'm sorry about that. Go ahead, Brandon. What you got?
We got a long way to go to crack the top 30. And I'm being generous.
Ain't but 21. Ain't but 21 or 22, Brandon. You like top 30. Good Lord.
He said we got problems behind some D2 programs. I see.
But let me stop before they don't answer my emails no more.
You sure right. That'd be good.
They're all watching, Brandon.
So now let me simmer down a little bit. But looking at the list, and you kind of touched on a little bit already, Doc. I'm actually surprised. I thought that FAMU would have made an appearance, considering, like I said, the football championship. I know they had some, I believe, in baseball, and they had some good showings in some other sports. But I know they had some issues, and Brian could speak to this in terms of women's basketball that season didn't. You know, they didn't quite ball out. So I'm assuming some of those other sports.
Men's basketball is on the uptick. It was men's basketball you talking about.
Wow, I got it mixed up. You're right. Got it mixed up.
I know when you talking about men's basketball. Yeah, that hurt them.
That's right. Thank you for clearing that. Getting me back on track. So I'm assuming some of those other sports may have dragged that ranking down and kept them out of the top 6. But when you go through,
they don't have women's soccer. You can't get points. You don't have the sport.
Like I said, if you don't have it, you can't get credit for it. It's like leaving an answer blank on the exam. You don't get credit for that.
Brother Brian,
you can't answer the question.
He's a FAMU guy. He say facilities gonna keep us in trouble. Wow. See, I like folks like that. I like fans like that are honest and front forward. You know, it's one thing to win championship top smack, but where you not where you want to be like, hey, we got some work to do. I appreciate that. Go ahead, Brandon.
But like I said, going through, but I think outside of that, I think the list is fairly solid. And you've touched on a lot of the points when you look at what Kerry Davis is doing at Howard in terms of specifically the football program. In some ways, to people who may not be familiar, feel like they may have come out of nowhere to come into the Celebration Bowl. But you look at some of the teams that they have in place there. It's easy to understand why they are there. Looking down to Ashley Robinson and even with the departure of Coach Sanders, and they were able to barely keep 7-4 to keep things rolling down there. We saw what the ladies basketball team was doing. And I really think, looking at even on the men's side, Coach Williams is still able to field a very competitive team on the basketball standpoint. So you look at a lot of the major sports down there at Jackson, they're doing a great job. I'm going to be nice, Norfolk. Norfolk State Spartans. I'm going to make sure I say it right. But again, when you look at go ahead, Doc. I'm sorry.
No, I'm just saying they're gonna come get you. They're gonna fill up your Twitter box. What? I've been at this for a minute. You better have some thick skin.
I might want to block out my social media handle so they can't reach out and touch me on the internet. But no, I'm going to be nice.
They sure will.
I'm going to be
nice.
Let
me ask you this one question as you close it up so I can get the Kyle. No, I want to ask you this question though, because you talked about FAMU. This is the tough part that I always say. You know, people say I want somebody here, I want something on, who you taking out? If you putting FAMU in, who you dropping out?
Was that for me?
Yeah,
that's open.
You said FAMU might have been in there, so if FAMU's in there, who you taking out?
Honestly, I would probably slide out Texas Southern and slide FAMU in. And like I said, I know that some of the other teams may not have been winning, but they were a lot closer in terms of, obviously, if they're at the mountaintop, if we're looking just at football, or not just looking at football, but they're a lot closer in a lot of their sports in some cases than Texas Southern is. So with that being said, I would kind of slide them out and if I was looking for a change to make. But outside of that, I think the list is pretty solid. I can't really find much fault with it.
It makes sense. Now I understand why he said top 30, because he weighs football quite a bit. And what they do in football, even though they started off hot and kind of fell out, that's why he's saying Tennessee State, historically, where they want to be in football is not there. So now it all makes sense. He got a big deal on football, and now that adds up. But Kyle, let me go to you. Top 6. Kyle, I know you do a lot of work in these areas. You look at data a lot of different ways. You work with ADs. You call them. You're on the forefront when the coaching hires are being made. So I'm very intrigued to see what are your thoughts, because I'm sure you have some different measures that you might sneak in there that creates a different framework. But in terms of what I got here in terms of top 6, where are you on the list?
Top 2, I don't have a problem. I was surprised that FAMU did not make it. And Coach, I guess I'm on your side there. But to be honest with you, man, when talking to Dr. Granger, he did lay out exactly what the Tigers were able to do as an athletic department this season. He was pretty proud at the track championships. The golf team performed pretty well as well. And he looked at everything. And I thought number 6 is probably where they were. You know, no major championships. The football team just did not perform well, especially toward the end of the season. But I was surprised that Grambling was positioned at number 5, and I was surprised at the Norfolk State Spartans being at number 3, and that was a shock. I need to go back and be able to look at what happened with their program and how they were able to get some championships. We know the basketball programs do pretty well there, but Coach Odoms has been struggling football-wise, you know, and that's a surprise to have them positioned there. I haven't heard much other than I think do they have tennis? I think their tennis team did pretty good, right? And the golf team was okay. So, but I thought Alabama State would have been probably number 2 or number 3, in my opinion. So that's just how I saw it. And obviously, Coach, you know, Dr. Cavil put some of these numbers together, and I thought Tiffany Dawn Sykes did a great job this season as an athletic director. And so that's just my thoughts.
Well, while we're waiting on Doc, he's got a little technical difficulty, so he'll be back in a second. I'm not gonna touch the FAMU. I know everyone in the chat room's looking like, oh, I know Brian's got a rebuttal.
He's got to say something.
He's got to say something.
Come on, Coach. You can. Since Doc's out, it's just us. Brandon and I, we won't tell anything, right, Brandon?
That's right.
See, what I love, knowing Doc long enough, what I know is Doc, there's so many other things that Doc looks at outside of just the performance on the field,
right,
and courts. And obviously, I think outside of men's basketball, I think FAMU in practically every sport had a good year. You know, some teams winning conference championships. Oh, let me back up. Some winning national championships, some winning conference championship, some winning division championships, some teams getting to the championship game. So all that's great. But then you look at, as we've already had Byron say, we got facility issues. And then when you look at the murky mess and just, you know, there's a lot of, and I don't know if that gets counted against you in this respect, you know, I mean, obviously new hires and how that's all. I don't know if that plays against you in something like this. So if we're like number 7, and I don't know if Doc will necessarily reveal who is number 7, but if we are number 7, I understand us being out of the top, 6. You know what I'm saying?
Well, this just makes me think: is the FAMU facilities just that poor right now, or they just need to?
There are some facilities, and I think we got Doc back as well. There are some facilities that are very poor. Baseball, for one. And when I say probably poor in comparison to our SWAC brethren, I think of baseball. I think of the tennis facilities. Now, I don't know what everybody else's tennis facilities look like. You know, we probably play in the nicest basketball arena, but you know, in terms of, you know, for how does that affect volleyball? Attendance isn't great. So, I mean, all those things, you know, I don't know. But I know we're struggling in some areas. And so, yeah, so, you know, those are just, softball probably needs some upgrades to its facility. So, like I said, if Doc said that we're right outside of the top 6, I could buy it. I could buy it. But what's a bigger question to me, and this is what, as Doc was going through this and I was circling and jotting notes, if you notice, if there's a lot of movement, slight movement, 1, 2 spots, but Howard University moved from 4 to 1. That is a significant jump. That's the kind of jump, Kyle, that people will be talking about, because look, who has the most FBS transfers going into this upcoming SWAC football season? But when that team rolls 10, 11 wins this year, people are going to say, whoa, they were better than last year. How does that happen? So that's the equivalent I'm using here. Doc, how does Howard...
So you're saying Howard is better than... I'm sorry.
I'm just saying, I want Doc to quantify how Howard moves from 4 to 1. That is a huge. That's like, hold on, how far can my hands fit in this screen? That's,
you know what? They're in the 90 percentile too. There.
Yeah, that's a significant jump. Man, what did Doc? What did Howard do that was so significant that they jumped 3 spots?
Did it happen when he came back from DC?
You're not the only person that was surprised. When I ran the numbers, I reran the numbers. I was like, what? I was
so Doc, I mean, from a layman's standpoint, everybody looks at championships and everybody says, oh, the championship's way heavy, but there are other measurables and metrics that you use. Just explain that for people.
Yeah, obviously the championships way heavy, and we kind of probably didn't realize just how many championships Howard won. So the total number of the championships helped them, but really what helped them is the fact when they didn't win a championship in the sport, they were finishing 2nd or 3rd.
Wow.
So they got a lot of points for being at the top of various sports in their program. What hurt them some, think about this, they don't have baseball. Now they have a lot of other sports that are not necessarily calculated individually, but it works in terms of the Olympic sports. So
like swimming.
Yeah, swimming. So they got the benefit in terms of winning championships in those sports. It was only in a singular area, so they didn't get multiple points for it, but they indexed really high at number 10 in terms of what they did in their overall program, how they performed, finishing with championships or at the top. The other thing they did is they've done some upgrades to some facilities around there. And anybody knows with Howard, that was desperate need in terms of what he did with the renovations in terms of the basketball arena, renovations to the locker room area. Those are things that, you know, they'll put a blip out there, but they don't necessarily get the national HBCU weight in terms of media coverage. So if you're not following those things, they don't stick out to you. But those are significant because that's going to help you recruiting. And obviously it's paid off in terms of what they've been able to do for their basketball. Regular season basketball finished pretty well. Didn't do too well in terms of the tournament on that side. But on the women's side, the other thing that Howard balanced is they're probably one of the best men's to women's ratio of finishing really well. So you had some folks that index really well on the men's sports, i.e. Texas Southern, but not so well on the women's side. You have other programs, Jackson State, that really index really well on the women's side, but not quite as well on the men's side. Or they probably would have gave Howard a run for the money in terms of that. Grambling State made a huge jump because they weren't ranked. So you're talking about that. So the last one I talk about before I get your thoughts in terms of what I just said in terms of indexing that is Grambling. They made a huge jump. They were in the mix last year, and obviously football was off the map in some ways. But what they did in terms of men's basketball, where they were in terms of women's basketball, really helped them. No, not the championship, but they were right there too in terms of what they did regular season, and then getting that big points to close out the season with basketball. But what hurt Grambling not to finish higher because they did a lot of good things in terms of facilities, but what they're doing in their Olympic sports, women's track and field, men's track and field, they really hurt them in terms of being able to maybe be higher in the rankings of what took place. So the important part of this is while we, as you said, focus on championships and some of the individual sports, this really looks at across the board. What are you doing as an athletic director, VP, across the board in your program? And some of that will show in some championships. Some of that will show in all sports. But some of that needs to also be shown in terms of what you're doing with facilities, raising funds for your institution outside of what you're doing individually. Go ahead, Kyle.
Last question was about the Spartans, man. That's just tremendous to see them at number 3, but everybody just knows about the basketball program doing very, very well. You know, how did they get to that level?
Track and field. They really do well in track and field, both on the men's and women's side. They index relatively high on both of those sports. They do both well on men's and women's in basketball to help them. What hurt them in terms of football, in terms of that. And I also want to give kudos to Webb because she's the only woman that's made that top list. Now, there are a couple of other ones that are in the top 10 that need to focus on that are putting in some work. But to get in that top 6, Webb, and that's 2 years in a row. So credit and kudos to her in terms of what she's doing at Norfolk State. If they can get a turn from football, which will be interesting since they're in that MEAC Champions challenge, they have a chance to make a statement with a program that's in the top 10 rankings as well. Obviously, they got all the kudos that they deserve by ultimately winning the championship in the National Black College Football Championship football next year. So it indexed real quick to start things off for the 3rd annual ranking. There's a lot of things to go in between what that looks like in terms of those ADs, VPs that are getting it done.
All right. Good stuff, man.
Can I ask one more question, Doc? Because I was looking at looking at the slight difference between Texas Southern and Grambling, and I mean we're talking less than a point between 6th and 5th, right?
Right.
Is there more value in winning men's basketball and baseball than doing what Texas Southern did in track and field cross country? Or are all championships valued the same, or is there slight differences?
No, they're always the same. You know,
Okay.
you get essentially 10 points from that point rankings. You get that highest points for winning first, and then it descends based on where you finish in terms of your rankings. Now, men's track, even though men's and women's track is actually 3 sports, I only give a point for one, but obviously to get it all together, that helps you making sure that you get that 10 points and stay at the top in terms of rankings. So across the board, no, they're all ranked the same, nominal. And that's why, while in people's minds, football and basketball may weigh heavier in terms of fan supports and bragging points, but in terms of your overall ranking of what you're doing for your program, all other sports are just as important as well.
Now, as far as media is concerned, Brandon, and as well as access, that's one thing I would like to see some media guys actually talk about how these programs interact with the media side. And because I think you will have some differences in rankings there, but it also would also enlighten some people that ADs, VPs of athletics, and everybody else still have so many different things they have to balance from a day-to-day basis to be able to perform their job well.
Yeah,
I totally agree with you. Well, I want to take this last break. Kyle, I want to thank you for joining us. I know you got another.
Thank you, guys.
Once we get out of this break, I have one final question for Brian and Brandon, and then we'll let you out of here as we close up the show. But I'd like to take this final break and ask a little bit, get a little tease in here and ask you, what do you think about changing the name of a conference? Where are you with that? Are we prepared mentally for that at the HBCU level? Stick with us. Be right back after this last break.
Since 2002, Empowerment Resources, Inc., a nonprofit organization, has empowered more than 1,500 youth and adults in Duval and surrounding counties through its programs Journey into Womanhood, Girls Mentoring, Life Skills for Teens, and Parenting Education Coaching. To get involved with programs, volunteer, or donate, visit www.empowermentresourcesinc.org. Follow us on social media, facebook.com/empowerment.resources and Instagram.com/empowermentJAX.
The human voice has always connected audiences with experiences. Major brands all across America have trusted Kever's voice time and time again. Conversational, powerhouse, intelligent, and sincere. That's the voice you need for your creative marketing process. KEAVERSVOICE.com. Kever's Voice, Kever's Voice, KeversVoice.com. Always on, all the time.
Nope. Nope.
Come on, him?
Ooh, I like him.
Quick, the quicker picker-upper. Bounty picks up messes quicker, and each sheet is 2 times more absorbent so you can use less.
He's an 8.
He's a 9.
Bounty, the quicker picker-upper.
From novice to aficionado, find yourself here. High quality cigars plus personal customer service. Slow Burn is Waco's only mobile cigar lounge, featuring a meticulous, curated collection of premium cigars. Visit our website, www.slowburnwaco.com. That's www.slowburnwaco.com.
Compress the analytic data with your hip hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they wanna loud and who the ball. So listen to Professor, yes sir, and pay attention, cause he gon' teach a lesson.
This is Dr. Cavil with Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with none other than Brian Fulford and Brandon King. As I promised, I wanted to get this last one in here and just get your thoughts on this before we call it a final show. Our conference's naming rights, the future of HBCUs. Obviously, this was coming out of HBCUsports.com. Give them credit in terms of what they put out there. In the world of NCAA, you probably heard the reports by Ross Dillinger of Yahoo Sports College Football, as he talked about this past Thursday, the Big 12 Conference and even Conference USA are considering potential naming rights. We've heard this all the time, but not for a stadium, not for a basketball arena, not for a football field, a baseball stadium, right? Not on a basketball court, but for a conference, the conference, Big 12. They are sponsored heavily, for example, by All-State. Would it be the All-State 12 or Dr. Pepper 12? What are your thoughts in terms of what that looks like? Conference USA is the SWAC, MEAC, CIAA, SIAC, or the changing from the GCAC in terms of the HBCU Athletic Conference, HBCU AC. Are they prepared to change? Can you look for the Southwestern Athletic Conference being known as the Southwestern Airlines Athletic Conference? Brandon, what are your thoughts in terms of that? Is this a place where we're ready in terms of fans? More importantly, presidents and chancellors, are they prepared to sign off on getting a sponsor to change the name of a conference? 1920 for the SWAC now. 19
Well,
that would be 1912, 1913 for the CIAA and SIAC. You know, over 100 years for three of those conferences, over 50 years for the other.
Well, I think you touched on a lot of from a historical standpoint. I think you would get a lot of pushback from that, and I look at it almost as the potential NASCARification of college athletics, because and I'm a old NASCAR fan. How old? I still say Winston Cup. I don't know who sponsors it now, but and I think if you ever got to the point where it would be the Nabisco Mid-Eastern Athletic Conference or whatever the case may be, you would still, from a fan standpoint, they're still going to use the same terminology that they always have for years. That part is not going to change at a core level, because that's what they grew up with. That's what it's always been. That's what it will continue to be. On the official side, it would get some adjustment, I'll say. But I think in terms of campus presidents and people in those positions, those seats of power, I think that if they're not ready, they'd better have an eye on what's going on, because in some ways, I look at it like this, with the, as you called it, the Big Two. It's almost like the California of college athletics. You know how as California goes in some things, it will eventually trickle its way into a lot of areas of the country. We could definitely have an eye on that and pay attention to that, because once we're talking about the Tesla Big 12 conference, it's only a matter of time. And especially, and then I'll land my plane here, especially with these big conferences looking to, for lack of a better term, consolidate power. And I think trying to figure out a way to squeeze the NCAA out for us and our leagues, we better be paying attention to it to make sure we don't, get left holding the proverbial bag, so to speak.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Brian, what do you say?
I'm all for it. And I hope that Dr. Charles McClellan and the other commissioners, I hope they are ready to as Brandon said, the NASCARification. I want to see logos everywhere. I want to see them on the uniforms. I want to see them on the fields. I want the first down marker to be sponsored by this company. I want to see logos on the first down marker. I want the touchdown to be sponsored by this company. Look, whatever it's going to take to raise the money. I told you many a times I felt like college athletics is a recession-proof industry. And before the bubble burst, don't know when it'll happen, Doc, but history tells us that eventually it will, right?
Right.
When? Get in now. I tweeted this out. I don't know if we're going to call it the Pepsi SWAC, the Coca-Cola MEAC, the Cricket SIAC, the nationwide CIAA. I don't care. Whatever, please get some money that you can give to these schools to help them grow. Now, the question is, though, because if I was looking at the article that Brett McMurphy sent, he said that he says that Allstate was working on a deal anywhere between 30 to 50 million, right, for the Big 12. What is the worth of the SWAC? Is it, I don't know, 10 to 15 million? Is that too low? Is that just right? That's the main question. What is it worth to rename your conference by said company? You know, I think this is a great question that I think all of the conferences have to try to put value on. And look, with all of the, I mean, Brandon said the MEAC is going to be what, 55 some odd games on the ESPN network of families. I think the SWAC kind of has a similar number, if I recall. It was somewhere in the 50s. I mean, that's a significant number of games that will have a large potential audience base. So I just think you got to take advantage while you can, and while you already have these corporate sponsors, get them now while you can. You know, just my thoughts.
Good points on both sides, and I think you all have the arguments down in terms of the way people feel on both sides of the issue. You know, some people are like, hey, let's jump all in head first, sink or swim, let's go at it. And you got other folks say, hey, hold on, let me put my toe in the water a little bit, and they want to ease on in there, if at all. A little concerned. So that's fascinating when you look at it like that. And so I'm intrigued. In terms of your question, in terms of data, I've done some analysis that looked at like potential sponsors based on what happened with the previous sponsors or folks leaving a conference, the value of what you would say Tennessee State joining the MEAC, if you would. What does that look like for Clark Atlanta joining the conference, or Morehouse joining the MEAC, or even A&T joining the SWAC from that perspective? What does it look like from these institutions, or when they left? I've done some calculation, and I have a valuation for each of these institutions. I got to decide when I want to put that out there, because for some folks, I think it's going to make them really nervous. For other folks, they're going to be quite concerned, and some folks will be happy for what those numbers represented. But I'm pretty comfortable with what's out there. So thinking about that. The other one, before we close up, I did want to say this in regards to those Super Two, as I like to call them, the Big Ten and the SEC, in terms of where they are as power conferences. Obviously, they still call them in the media the Power Four, since all but two of the schools have essentially killed what we knew as the Pac-12, and they still call them the Autonomous Four in terms of the NCAA language. But I think sometimes we forget, if you really look at the data, that Autonomous Four controls like 95+% of the revenue coming out of the NCAA. They control that. And we just seen with the last legislation of this court where they forced the other D1 schools essentially in basketball, even though this was in a lot of ways a football issue, is that they're going to pay 60% of the money of that deal. But even if you look at it just from a revenue and expense, those schools get a lot more of the revenue coming out of the NCAA from basketball, but the expense side of it, expense goes to everybody, and they sharing those expenses. So there's no need to leave the NCAA. Anytime they get mad, all they do is threaten to leave, and they go back and they get another 0.5% and grow richer. So I don't see them leaving, particularly before 32, before the basketball conference. And even with that, I just highly doubt that they're going to leave the NCAA, because they control it. We act like the NCAA is this independent body of work. The NCAA is those power brokers, those institutions that you talk about leaving. They control the NCAA, those presidents and chancellors. Why would you leave when you have everything control it and you have less expenses? If they leave, they got to pay 100% of the expenses. They don't pay 100% of the expenses. Yeah, they get all the revenue. They still get 95% of the revenue. Now, yeah, they would get 5% more, but think about what they're increasing on the expense side of the ledger. It's just not a good business decision. They're not going anywhere. they'll just threaten a little more, stomp their feet and get mad. They'll get another 0.5%. Before you know it, they'll be at 99, 98%. And so they'll shut up for another year until you give them another 0.5% to get them closer to where they want to go. With that being said, we'll close it up the show. Appreciate you sharing and getting some love. It was good back to be in here, but I'm going to go back in the slumber quiet and watch y'all do what y'all do, giving everybody, and make sure I get some time to do some other things. So I want to say thank you for listening inside the HBCU Sports Lab. Make sure you share our podcast with your friends and colleagues. I am Dr. Kenyatta Cavil, the Dean of HBCU Sports, coming from inside the lab in the College of Sports with Mike Washington and Charles Bishop, but with special guests today, Brian Fulford and Brandon King. As you see, I have my son here. He wanted to make sure he said hello as he got out of his camp. Getting ready. He wanted to make sure he get a little show time as he was here having to listen to the show. I appreciate him. With that being said, again, I want to thank you for listening to Dr. Viz inside the HBCU Sports Lab. Appreciate all the lab listeners. Continue to get it, spread the love, and getting the information out there, and always checking on me behind the scenes. All is well, just putting at the work as we do on the Dean side of stuff. So thank you. Check us out every Tuesday and Thursday, 6 o'clock Central Standard Time. Right here, you know what we do. It's getting closer to football. We'll give you those updates, give you some predictions, get you what you need and what you want. So make sure you continue to check here if you would, or whether that's Brian and AD on the Sports Wrap, O&G Strike Zone as they do on Wednesday. Brandon King, you'll see him doing some more things. Look for him to give you some updates and make sure he can give you updates on Tennessee State and those other two independents, North Carolina A&T, as well as Hampton. So check him out, Sneaker King, his website and page there, getting you love there. Follow me, Dr. Kenyatta Cavil. That's Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. Inside the HBC Sports Lab on Facebook, X, formerly known as Twitter. I still don't know what they want to call it, so I just call it Twitter. The hell with it. HBC Sports Lab on YouTube. Dream big. Continue to move forward. We'll talk with you soon. Brian?
Course.
Lecture.
Brian?
Course.
Volume there. Brandon?
Lecture.
Dismiss.